My name is Gavin Mercer, and just 90 days ago, I was the golden boy of Atlas Bridge Logistics, top acquisition strategist, trusted with the company's most sensitive accounts, the guy who brought in the big numbers without needing applause. Now, I'm the guy they tried to erase. It all started the moment I stepped back into the office after a single day off, my first vacation day in over a year. I had barely dropped my keys on my desk before I got the email, 24th floor, now. I thought maybe it was about the deal I'd just landed. A $3.7 million contract with Vectra Systems. It was a record. The kind of win that usually earns you champagne in the break room. Instead, I walked into a room with 2 chairs, a folder, and Clark Vensley, our vice president of strategy, sitting like he'd been waiting all morning just to watch me squirm. "Gavin," he said, all clipped smiles and rehearsed indifference, "your actions suggest you're no longer aligned with our team's values." I blinked. "Come again?" "You attended a competitor's event." He flipped open the folder like it held state secrets. "Yesterday, during your PTO." I stared at him. "I invited me to speak as a panelist." "That's irrelevant," he said. "You stood on a stage beside a competitor's brand. That sends a message." So did what came next. "You're being terminated. Effective immediately." No warning, no discussion, no recognition of what I'd built for them. Just 2 security guards waiting by the elevator and a painfully generic termination letter that could have been addressed to anyone. I was still holding the letter when I passed my team's workstations. No one made eye contact. I could feel the silence tightening around me like a noose. One I hadn't even known was hanging over my head. But here's the twist. I wasn't even angry. Not yet. That would come later, once I discovered what Clark and his circle had really been hiding. And once I realized they hadn't fired me because I betrayed the company. They fired me because I was finally in a position to expose them.
At Atlas Bridge Logistics, I wasn't just another name on a spreadsheet. I was the guy who turned cold leads into contracts and turned overlooked accounts into million-dollar pipelines. My early years were brutal, 60-hour weeks, non-stop travel, and countless last-minute flights to chase hesitant prospects. But I earned my stripes. I led the restructure of our Southeast region. I landed the Vectra Systems deal that saved the company's fiscal quarter. I even mentored the interns who are now junior managers. All of it mattered, until it didn't. By the time security walked me out, I already knew something was off. The accusation, conflict of interest, was thin. I hadn't joined a competitor. I hadn't leaked trade secrets. All I'd done was speak on a panel I'd been invited to because of my success at Atlas Bridge. But their story was airtight. Apparently, I had violated a loyalty and external engagement clause that had been added to my file 3 months ago. A clause I'd supposedly signed. Except I hadn't. The HR manager, Victoria Lynn, handed me a printed copy with my signature on it. A perfect match. But I knew I never signed that document. I would have remembered, especially the part about forbidding speaking engagements without pre-approval. I stared at the page, heart pounding, knowing something deeper was at play. I tried calling Damon Reese, my direct supervisor, the one who'd once called me indispensable during our yearly evaluations. Nothing. straight to voicemail. This same man had convinced me to turn down another offer just last month. The offer was from Bravion Freight, offering nearly double my base. Damon had pleaded, "We're restructuring comp plans. You'll be rewarded. Just give me 2 weeks to finalize it." I believed him. Now, I stood alone in the elevator, cardboard box in hand, trying to figure out how a man goes from company golden boy to disposable liability overnight. Inside the box, a coffee mug from our very first product launch, my personalized business card holder, a tiny cactus I'd managed to keep alive longer than my last 2 relationships, and nothing else. 4 years of my life, all of it fit into a box I could carry with one hand. What really broke me wasn't the firing, it was the erasure. The deal I'd closed with Vectra Systems, the $3.7 million contract I'd spent months negotiating, was gone from my performance record. When I requested my bonus breakdown from finance, I was told the project had been reallocated for reporting simplicity. Apparently, Damon had listed it under his division, claiming I had assisted, not led. I'd spent weeks flying to Vectra's Kansas and New Jersey sites on my own dime because the company was tight on travel budget. I'd missed my niece's piano recital, lost sleep over contract language, and secured terms that undercut our competition by 12%. And now, I was being told it wasn't my deal. I stared at the final paycheck. No commission, no bonus, just base salary minus taxes and my unused PTO. I could barely breathe. I called the director of sales operations, Carla DuPont, to demand clarity. She answered in a whisper, "Gavin, I'm not supposed to talk to you, but you should know it wasn't about the panel." "What was it then?" I asked. "They were already looking for a reason. Clark wanted you gone, said you were getting too visible outside the company." My blood ran cold. So this was planned? I can't say more. Just check your last bonus line item. Something's off there. I shouldn't be calling you. And she hung up. That night, I opened my archived pay slips. The last quarter's Vectra commission was missing entirely. The internal email thread I'd kept showed Damon forwarding my contract drafts to Clark with notes like, "Gavin's pushing hard for this one. Let him take the heat on pricing. If it lands, we can reassign internally." I hadn't noticed those comments before, but now, reading them again, it was clear they had set me up long before the panel ever happened. The icing on the cake? A text from Damon, hours after my termination. "Sorry how things went down. Corporate politics. Nothing personal." Nothing personal. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I deleted it. Then I archived every client contract I'd contributed to, every email, every project file. Backed them all up. I didn't know what I'd do yet, but I knew one thing. If they thought I'd just vanish quietly into the night, they didn't know me at all.
I wasn't done. I couldn't be. When you've built your life on hard work and integrity, being accused of deception isn't just a professional insult, it's a personal war. That night, after Carla's cryptic warning, I turned my apartment into a war room. Papers spread across the kitchen table, emails reread, contracts reviewed line by line. I cross-referenced every file I had signed in the last year. My onboarding packet, quarterly reviews, project authorizations. None of them contained the clause they now claim I had violated, this so-called loyalty and external engagement restriction. But then I remembered something. 2 months earlier, HR had accidentally included me in a group email that wasn't meant for me. Attached was a screenshot of internal HR documents used to process bonuses. It had seemed routine at the time until I pulled it up again. There it was, a PDF file labeled Policy Addendum Signed. My name, my signature, dated 6 weeks ago. Except I never signed it. Not only was the date wrong, but the signature looked off. It wasn't forged in the crude way you'd expect from a teenager. No, this was surgical. The signature was too clean, too perfect, like it had been lifted from an old company-issued ID badge. And the text alignment on the document? Slightly misaligned, like someone had swapped in the last page after printing. My stomach turned. I wasn't just wronged, I was framed. Fueled by that discovery, I called Shannon Reed, a former account executive who had voluntarily resigned last year under similarly vague circumstances. I hadn't spoken to her since her departure, but desperation eats pride. I asked her if she'd ever been shown something she didn't remember signing. There was a long pause on the line before she whispered, "They did the same thing to me. I couldn't prove it, and when I asked questions, they accused me of mishandling client files." I sat back in my chair, heartbeat in my ears. Did they ever mention legal threats? They said I'd breached confidentiality. Then they flagged my LinkedIn. Clients stopped replying overnight. Exactly what was happening to me. The next morning, I logged into LinkedIn. There it was, a quiet, scorched earth campaign, subtle but brutal. Atlas Bridge had issued warnings to all my contacts, phrased as industry advisories. They accused me of leaking confidential pricing information to a competitor, Kinetic Flow, the very startup where I'd been invited to speak for one panel on automation ethics. I had no stake in the company, no employment, nothing but a guest badge and a free sandwich. Yet now my name was radioactive. Overnight, I'd gone from respected industry voice to suspected corporate traitor. Several contacts had already disconnected. A few replied with lukewarm, awkward, best of luck messages. Worse, 2 pending job opportunities went cold. No callbacks. Silence. I reached out to Chloe, a recruiter I'd been working with for weeks. She picked up, her voice lower than usual. "Gavin, I just got word from one of the hiring panels. Someone from your former company called, said you're involved in a potential ethics dispute." "Did they give proof?" "No, just implied it's under investigation." "I'm sorry, Gavin. They're blackballing you." I thanked her, hung up, and felt the weight settle in my chest. Not the weight of failure, but the rage of being strategically erased. They hadn't just fired me. They were trying to ruin me. Later that afternoon, I received a cease and desist email from Atlas Bridge's legal team. It accused me of unauthorized use of proprietary strategy slides during my talk at Kinetic Flow. They demanded I withdraw from any future speaking engagements and warned that continued violation could result in legal action. This was absurd. Those slides weren't even from Atlas Bridge. I'd made them from publicly available data and industry trends, things I'd learned over 10 years of experience. But it didn't matter. The threat alone was enough to scare potential partners away. I called a lawyer. He reviewed the accusations, frowned, and said, "If they faked your signature, this is fraud. But proving it will be expensive, and they're playing a long game." I sat there, fists clenched, jaw tight. "They want you too tired or too broke to fight back," he added. But I wasn't broke. Not in spirit. I had copies of every proposal I'd written, email receipts from clients praising my work, testimonials, proof that the deals I'd closed were mine. And now I had a new purpose. Not just to clear my name, but to dismantle the machine that dared to erase me. I wasn't going to fight this alone anymore. That afternoon, while reviewing one of my old pitch decks in a daze, I received a message from Cleo Mendoza, the legal advisor at Kinetic Flow, who had attended my automation ethics panel weeks earlier. She'd heard whispers about the blacklisting stunt pulled by Atlas Bridge. "They're playing dirty," she texted. "And if what you told me is true about the fake contract, it might be criminal. Want to talk?" By evening, I was sitting across from her in a quiet cafe near downtown. I brought the forged policy, the HR email with my name misused, and the cease and desist letter. Cleo didn't flinch. "This isn't just defamation," she said, flipping through the pages with practiced precision. "This is corporate fraud. And if they've done this to you, odds are you're not the first." Cleo tapped her phone. "I'll pull in a forensic document analyst and a white-collar litigation expert. If you're ready to fight this, Gavin, we can help." I was more than ready. While her team launched into research, I combed through my old files, emails, commission reports, Slack messages, and even screenshots from late-night file access logs. And I began seeing patterns. Deal memos modified after close dates, performance reviews overwritten with last-minute concerns, and strange consulting fees filed under departments that didn't even exist when the project was active. Then came the smoking gun. I stumbled across a deleted Dropbox folder I had once shared with Edgar Lin, a junior financial analyst on my old team. It was still cached in my email's attachment preview history. One file name caught my eye: Q3 Bonus Adjustments V2 Internal Use. I reached out. I hadn't spoken to Edgar in over a year. He responded in 5 minutes. His reply simply read, "Meet me tomorrow, and don't bring your work phone." We met in a park outside town. Edgar looked older than I remembered, tired, like the system had chewed through his optimism and spit it out into a cubicle somewhere. He said, "My wife's surgery claim got denied last fall. HR said it was a processing error, but when I pushed, they cited a clause that doesn't exist in her coverage. Guess who signed off on the rejection?" I didn't need to guess. "Benedict." He nodded. "I've had enough." Edgar handed me a USB drive. Security footage of Benedict logging into our HR portal at 2:14 a.m. He was editing your personnel file. I cross-referenced access logs. He did the same to 3 other employees, all of whom were legally terminated within a week of asking for bonus adjustments. My throat tightened. "Do they know you have this?" "No." I mirrored the data off the backup server. I also kept a local copy of the consultant payment records. Some of them don't even have tax IDs. They're fake vendors. "Who got paid?" I asked. Edgar stared out at the lake. "Damon. He's been funneling 10% of team bonuses into a shell company registered to his brother-in-law every quarter." Cleo's team verified everything within a week. They found inconsistencies across multiple departments, phony job titles tied to $4,000 to $10,000 advisory retainers, all billed through a single tax entity, Fathom Strategies. Guess who filed Fathom's incorporation papers? Damon West. More damning still, Benedict had approved backdated terminations with forged documentation to avoid paying severance. The company had built an entire system of weaponized HR policies, edited quietly, enforced strategically, and designed to silence dissent. This wasn't office politics. This was a blueprint for financial abuse. And I finally had the tools to fight back. The final puzzle piece came from Edgar again. He said, "I printed hard copies of your performance reviews before they changed them. The originals showed you as exceeding expectations across the board, but the versions in the system now mark you as inconsistent and at risk.
The changes happened 48 hours before your panel speech. Cleo took one look at the files and nodded. We're filing a whistleblower suit. And once discovery starts, they're going to wish they had just let you walk. I knew we'd only get one shot at this. So I went silent. No LinkedIn posts, no retaliation online. I let them think they had won while we built the case from beneath the radar. Cleo's team even contacted a few former employees anonymously. Two of them, a project manager and a client success director, quietly confirmed the same pattern: unexpected terminations after requesting unpaid commissions or questioning consulting expenses. One even claimed Damon offered him a little incentive to walk away quietly. He said to Cleo, "I kept the wire record. I'll testify." In 2 months, we had affidavits, video evidence, altered audit trails, and proof of financial kickbacks. I wasn't alone anymore. We had a case, and for the first time in this entire nightmare, I had power.
8 weeks after Cleo's firm initiated proceedings, everything ignited. Her legal team filed whistleblower protection documents, a formal complaint with the Department of Labor, and a detailed report to the Securities and Exchange Commission. They included video evidence of Benedict altering personnel files, Edgar's logs, the forged contracts, and every misappropriated bonus document we had tracked. The report was airtight, built on testimony, receipts, and digital forensics. Meanwhile, Kinetic Flow quietly prepared for impact. Their legal department coordinated with Cleo's team, not just to protect me, but to publicly distance themselves from the rot at Atlas Bridge. Then it happened. A Wednesday morning, crisp and clear. Federal agents arrived at the glass doors at Atlas Bridge's Raleigh headquarters mid-board call, right as Benedict and Damon were preparing their quarterly investor remarks. They didn't get to finish. Both were escorted out in handcuffs. It hit every news feed within hours. Whistleblower case rocks Atlas Bridge. CFO and VP of Strategy arrested for fraud, tampering, and racketeering. Employees from every corner of the company started forwarding messages of support. Some I hadn't spoken to in years. Some I never met. Others had their own stories. But one name stood out: Janice Fletcher, a former compliance officer who had quietly resigned 18 months earlier. She contacted Cleo's team directly and volunteered her own files: audio recordings from meetings, spreadsheets never sent to auditors, internal warnings that were buried. Her testimony clinched the case. Within weeks, federal prosecutors filed formal charges. A class action lawsuit was initiated by former employees cheated out of years of bonuses and severance. Investors pulled out. Atlas Bridge's stock plummeted by 62% in 5 trading days. The board initiated an emergency restructuring and quietly began selling off assets. But that wasn't my concern anymore. Because 3 days after the arrests, Kinetic Flow's CEO, Marla Jensen, called me into her office. A glassy corner suite I'd only been in once, during a strategy presentation months ago. She smiled, calm and fierce. "We know what you did. Not just for yourself, but for everyone they tried to silence." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She continued, "We're offering you something. Something that comes with real authority, and more importantly, trust." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a contract. Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. Salary, double what I made before. Bonuses tied to ethics-first growth benchmarks. A team of 12. Full autonomy to build client partnerships from the ground up. I stared at the offer. "Why me?" I asked finally. Marla leaned back. "Because you didn't just survive, Gavin. You stood up. You didn't trade integrity for survival. That's who we want shaping our future." I signed the offer on the spot. The next 6 months felt surreal. Under my direction, Kinetic Flow tripled its client base. Vendors who left Atlas Bridge came knocking. Former sales professionals from across the region asked for interviews. Even LinkedIn messages turned from polite inquiries into, "When can I join your team?" We built a new culture: transparent, accountable, collaborative. We even introduced a new open bonus system. Every employee saw how commissions were calculated. No more silent deductions, no more mysterious overhead adjustments. We built something clean. And the industry noticed. At a regional tech summit, I was invited to speak on rebuilding after corporate collapse. I stood in front of 600 people, some familiar, some wary, and told the truth. Not just about what happened, but why I didn't walk away. Because walking away would have meant they win, and I didn't go through all that just to disappear quietly. After the talk, a young analyst approached me, probably 25, suit 2 sizes too big, eyes wide with cautious hope. He said, "My last boss fired me for asking about a missed bonus. Your story, it makes me think maybe it's not always hopeless." That made it worth it. Months later, when I received the final settlement from the whistleblower case, $280,000 in damages, plus all unpaid commissions, I didn't celebrate with champagne. I didn't book a vacation. I just quietly deposited the check. Then drove to a small diner outside Raleigh. My dad was already there, sitting in the corner booth with his usual coffee, smiling before I even sat down. "You didn't let them beat you," he said simply. "And you didn't become them either." I nodded. That's the part I'm proudest of. He tapped the envelope I slid across the table. "So what now?" I smiled. "Now we build it right."
Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It whispers in a moment of recognition. From the very beginning, Gabriel had been cast aside, ignored in favor of someone more convenient, erased from family functions, rewritten out of his own daughter's story. But even in that silence, he remained present, through kindness, through dignity, through unwavering love. In part 1, Gabriel's heartbreak began not with anger, but confusion. A father locked out of his daughter's life while others rewrote the narrative. In part 2, his quiet suffering grew heavier as years passed without acknowledgement, replaced by cold stares and forgotten birthdays. In part 3, we witnessed the subtle shift, Chloe's growing awareness, her questioning of the stories she'd been told. And in part 4, the moment of recognition, the day she reclaimed her father publicly, not out of guilt, but out of truth. This story reminds us that love, when real, endures time, lies, and even absence. That silence can be a tool of cruelty, but it can also be a space where integrity grows strong. And that healing sometimes begins not with grand apologies, but with the courage to say, "I remember." Gabriel didn't seek revenge. He didn't need to. His presence, his patience, and his quiet dignity became the loudest declaration of who he was. So, here's the truth. You can't always control how others tell your story, but you can live in such a way that when the truth is finally seen, it changes everything. If this story touched you, let us know in the comments. Have you ever been erased and then remembered? Or maybe you're the one who needs to make that first call. Either way, your voice matters. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We share stories that matter because sometimes the most ordinary lives hold the most extraordinary truths.